Yo, what's up? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to another story time. Another first time trying. Today we're getting into a pretty novel stimulant research chemical that my bro Marcel and I tried a couple years ago as of writing this. This was kinda unplanned, but not totally. But this is chapter 4 technically, but by light chance. Then again, chapter 4 was a lot of light chances as it was a transition period for me, as you'll quite literally hear how in this story. But I got the chance to try this substance, so of course I wanted to see what was up. But if you want more stories like this guys, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get into this experience though, let me lay down some backstory for this and what was going on at the time, and some things leading up to this. So to start this off, a big reason this happened was because of the homie Marcel. Marcel has been in a bunch of our stories now. He's been a bro of mine since elementary school, and we've always been cool. He's one of my best friends. But around this time, Marcel was pretty heavy into stimulants. Well, I wouldn't say heavy like that, but he was doing more than what the average person should be doing in terms of staying healthy. And the same thing goes with his girlfriend, cause she loved them. But they would basically get any prescription stimulant they could get their hands on. It all started, I think, with them wanting to try some Addies, and I normally had a plug or someone who hooked it up. Then of course things like Ritalin came along, Ritalin, Vyvanse, you name it. All different types of Addies too. XRs, IRs, a ton of different doses, pill types, sizes, colors, and so on. And the thing is, I would kind of be with them a good amount of the time taking some. Nowhere nearly as much or as often, but each time they picked up, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to get a few stimmies myself. So you could say we've been around when it comes to prescription stimulants. Which of course, we'll talk about this all more in other stories. But they have been doing this for at least like a year on and off, I would say, at the time of this story. But the thing about these prescription stimulants is often they can be taxed at points. Sometimes you can get good deals, but other times it can be inflated to all hell, especially if the area is dry at the time. Sometimes you're paying upwards of $20 for one pill. And you can just see how if you're almost doing it every day, it can just be down taxed. Not to mention the long-term effects. But I didn't mind it that much because like I said, I would only get them every so often. So I didn't feel the struggle with them in terms of cash. But Marcel would express this to me, and so I suggested to him that we can potentially look into getting a research chemical. So doing some research, we happened to stumble upon the substance Isopropylphenidate. Most people probably would have no clue as to what this is if you said it to them. Some of you might catch on the later term in this word though, phenidate. Ritalin is the brand name for methylphenidate. So from that, you can deduce isopropylphenidate is a stimulant-like substance related to Ritalin. And that's pretty much what this is. Now there's a handful of reasons why we ended up deciding on this substance, besides the price that is. One of those things was the duration, being just a few hours, followed by a few hours of offsetting. One negative thing about stimulants that I could see with Marcel was that it could really mess up his sleep. He didn't have regular sleeping habits because of them, and his sleep quality would be lacking a lot of the time. Every once in a while, he'd have a super long sleep, but normally he wants to get so much done that he only gets a few hours at a time. He would rely on more stimulants to help him stay up, and of course just using in general, especially the ones with a long duration like Vyvanse, it can cause you to stay up for really long periods of time without that intention. With this Ritalin analog, isopropylphenidate, ideally we figured a shorter duration would be easier to fit in throughout the day without much hindrance on sleep. And I'd say we were right about that for the most part. Another thing was reportedly, it's thought to be less toxic compared to other stimulants. But we did our research and figured it would be a good choice to see if it can be a legitimate alternative. So we found some, and it got to us in about a month or so. Now at this point in my life, I wasn't at my own place, which I may have brought this up in other stories, but to make it brief, I did end up staying at my girlfriend's family for some time, basically to sort some things out and get off on a better foot in life. But tragedy did strike while we were there, as we lost someone very close to us, and it was a really intense emotional period for my girlfriend, which I won't get into the details like that because this isn't really the place for it, but because of this, we had to adjust to move fast. We weren't just quite ready to do this yet, so we stayed at my grandma's for a month and a half I believe until we found a good place. But as it turns out, this isopropylphenidate would arrive a day before we would actually move out of my grandma's, just as if fate had this in store for us. Marcel and I both agreed we had to try it while moving, just for the hell of it and for the vibes. Which I haven't told this story and don't know if I will, but the time we actually moved in with my girlfriend's family, Marcel and I had taken Addie that day too. So it was fitting in a sense that this had come to us at this point, more stimulant vibes for the move. But for like a week or so we had planned to take a day to move, and we were gonna need a lot of help I knew, just because we had a bunch of shit. Marcel and his girlfriend were down, which I'm not sure if we ever brought her up in a story before, but we'll call her Andrea. She had been with Marcel for a couple years at this point, and she would normally hang out with us a lot. Then of course I had to see if the homie Ashton was down, mainly because I knew he wouldn't give a fuck about doing something like this, plus we were hanging out pretty often as of late. I'll just say now that he made this day pretty lively. And before we get into this, I just want to say I may not stick to time zones too heavily. This was a moving day for us, so the main goal wasn't necessarily to be lit or explore things recreationally, even though we still would be. But to get things started, I made sure the night before everyone was good, as we did have to pick up a moving truck the next morning, and everything seemed to be in order. I saw Michael and Andre a bit, and then I went back to my grandma's. No one was there that last night, as my grandparents were out for a trip in New York, and then my girlfriend was at her mom's. I remember chilling out, took a nice shower, had a nice ass last smoke with the doggies, and then got ready for the next day. So I woke up and started packing my whip with what I could, and got a hold of both Marcel and Ashton. Now Ashton wasn't getting back to me right away. He ended up staying out late the night before at this bar, where they had some people performing. Thankfully though, through fate, he would wake up in enough time to make it for this day. Now the truck situation was kinda stupid. We had used the U-Haul service, and we used it a few times before now and haven't had any problems. But this day they would straight up delay us like a half hour or 45 minutes because nobody knew what the fuck was going on. I signed us up for the mobile pickup because that's pretty normally straightforward, but I really think their app and service was fucked up. We needed like 4 numbers to verify this stupid shit, and Marcel was the driver, then it was my account, and I think it was just all this mixed up nonsense. So we had trouble proceeding at one point, and we had to try and take it to the counter. And I say this often, but man, we're like some characters, especially me and Ashton. Ashton normally has this heavy punk vibe about how he dresses and how he is. And of course I'm looking like Raiden with a Chinese farmer hat at the time. But we go in there for like 10 or 15 minutes and nobody's even fucking there. Like just straight lacking. Like the place was open, it opened at 8, but it was already past 10. There was no be right back sign, no on break sign. This bitch working the desk just fucking left. I have no clue what the hell she was doing. Going through the McDonald's drive-thru for another bitch ass coffee probably. Beats me, but it was a waste of our time. There was even some other people that came in trying to get some service, but no one had a clue where anyone was. But finally she comes back and we try to get some help to figure this dumb shit out. And guess what? She's pretty much just as clueless about it as we were. And she wasn't really any help at all with this. I had to try and figure this shit out myself, and basically after fucking around with some shit, I got it to work. I'm pretty sure I just glitched it to be honest, and it proceeded to the next screen where Marcel took a pic of his license. But basically that shit was stupid as hell, and we got the key an hour later than we wanted. But anyways, we pulled up to my grandma's and started to do some packing. And my girlfriend would pull up about 10 minutes later. So I should have been more careful about this looking back, but I bring Ashton downstairs of course to give him a quick idea of what we had to pack. Thing is, my grandma had this bar downstairs, right? They had just put it recently too, and all this alcohol was up for display. And I may have brought this up in another story, but if you don't know, Ashton's been a pretty heavy alcoholic at points in his life. There's a couple stories on the channel depicting it, and I got plenty more to come. Basically it wasn't uncommon at points for him to get absolutely blackout drunk. So him seeing this bar, of course he felt tempted to have a little. He asked me first of course, and I just said fuck it, just a bit. I was loose at this time, just wanting to have an easy move and try to make the day as fun as possible. So he had a bit, but thing is, he did have more when no one was looking. My girlfriend did happen to catch him. But we got everything we had to out of the crib, and as we were finishing up, I brought up to Marcel that we should try out the Isopropylphenidate. Now the thing is, we had it in powder form, and this is a practice I highly discourage anyone from partaking in. and it's one I really never do, but did so out of convenience this day. What I'm talking about here is eyeballing, and this is especially true for something you're doing the first time. Normally I like to have an idea of how much of a substance I'm doing, and a proper scale and weighing method is crucial for being accurate. And eyeballing a substance doesn't really tell you anything about the dosage, especially across substances. Even if you work with a substance all the time, if it's in powder form, I would be skeptical about guessing the weight. 1 gram of one substance can look very different than a gram of another one. The thing is, I had already packed these tools away already, buried somewhere now deep in the truck, and not wanting to waste any time this day, I said we'll start out small and see what was up. So we got a key and orally took bumps. I'm pretty sure I did it first, then I set one up for Marcel and then his girlfriend. And my girlfriend isn't a huge fan of stimulants or other drugs like that, and I discourage Ashton from trying it just because I feel like it wouldn't be good for his mental stability. Plus with that alcohol, I'm sure it would have been a terrible move. But just saying now, I would be somewhat stimmed the rest of this day following this point. We were looking for a mild stim, and boy was this an effective mild stim for me in many ways. We took it, and I swear I always feel stuff as fast as ever, partially because I have a fast ass metabolism. But we took it in the basement at the bar, and I always remember at this point in time with new things, I almost kinda zone out of what's going on, and zone into feeling any potential effects. I just take a second after a minute or so, and notice that there was a change. Of course I recognize this to be some stimulation, but different than other stimulants I've had. One thing was, it hit me much more cognitively than I thought it would, and much more recreationally. Like I got pretty pumped up and ready to experience the day, that we would be able to take on whatever. Now I have to say though, for Marcel and Andrea, they would not feel the stimulant in the same way as me, which I mainly attribute this to their larger built-up tolerance, and they definitely got a more mild side of it, kinda in the way I was expecting it to hit. They were still in a good mood though, and we would redose later on. But this stimulation did provide a good amount of focus and almost a clarity on things I would say, especially in my field of vision, if that makes sense. I would feel some physical stimulation as well, kinda all around, but nothing too uncomfortable or undesirable. I did grab a Rain energy drink from the fridge and started to drink on it, just because at this point in time, I wouldn't normally like to have caffeine with stimulants, so I'm sure this helped boost the effects much more. One thing I would notice was some dehydration, but we got a whole case of water for the day, so we got that covered. But yeah, this set in quickly and we were pretty much ready to go, which we had to stop at 2 storage units this day. Next stop was the first one, but before we would get going, we would have a bit of an episode from Ashton. Fucking Ashton, man. So remember this guy was drinking behind everyone's back at the bar. I guess he wanted to have a lot, so he would be good for a while. Thing was, he was already sipping on a 40 throughout all this, so of course it was excessive. Especially considering all that was down there was hard liquor, so that really fucked him up. Now the thing is, this all went completely unnoticed by me. I mean, I had no intention to pay any attention like that to begin with, but I'm sure the stimulant effects didn't help with this. My girlfriend was the first to notice of course, but then Andrea and Michael picked up on it. Cause thing was, this dude was speaking half drunk, slurring his words, and didn't even know what the hell was going on anymore at some point. I thought they were fucking with me at first, but I got outside and shit, and that's when I noticed. I remember as soon as I walked out, Ashton just straight up tripped into the moving truck, but barely caught himself. I asked him if he was good, and he told me he was, and I just told him to sit down in the truck for a minute and drink some water. Our day was barely starting to get going. But I continued on packing, then Andrea was telling us he had no clue what was going on or where he was. So I go back to the passenger seat, and he was looking like he was about to pass out. I asked him if he was good again, and if he's gonna be straight. I had to remind him that he was helping me move today, and that we were about to leave. Literally, bro had no clue what was going on. Which he mumbled back to me half dead, "Oh yeah, my bad bro." Then he was saying to me just how sorry he was for all of it, and just how he hated ending up in states like this. Like he started explaining to me deeply right then about how it can all be like a switch, where he's drinking just to chill out and have a good time, then ends up in a state where he gets absolutely drunk as hell and doesn't have control over his actions really, or remember what happens or how he acts. But I'm understanding with him because it isn't the first time I've seen Ashton drunk as hell, and I get where he's coming from. I just tell him to chill out for now, get some AC going, drink some more water, and just to rest up. Marcel would be driving, so he could just sit back and chill. But we finished getting everything situated, and I remember just turning on Superman mode at this point, just moving the last bits of what we had to like it was nothing, an effect influenced by the stimulant for sure. Marcel of course tends to get influenced by me and follow suit, and we both were hustling. It was the middle of the summer, and despite it being only 10 in the morning or so, we built up a decent sweat, also an effect influenced by the stimulant. I did have that feeling I had taken a stimulant of some sorts, that parts of my brain and body were taking it in and setting into the feelings of the norepinephrine and dopamine. I don't want to say this was like coke necessarily, but certain aspects reminded me of it. Like a coke that lasts a few hours, not as strong, but just as enjoyable and effective. I was mindful to get some more water in and make sure I didn't get overheated this day. Right before leaving though, Marcel and I both redosed another small amount for the road. Main reason being is, he didn't know feeling it the way I was, and I wanted to make sure he did get something, which the initial ingestion of the substance does provide some satisfaction, but I really don't feel like any of the effects start to set in until about 10 minutes or so. And also the taste of this was pretty ass, just like this chemical taste, but not the worst thing I've had by any means. I would get some solid euphoria and motivational drive from this, while Marcel more so just got hints of it unfortunately. And I have to say it was more so cognitively driven than physically. But anyways, we finish up and go to the first storage unit, which was maybe 5 minutes away. Now this unit was pretty light compared to the other one we had to go to, but there were some couches and some other heavy shit we still had to get from this first one. Marcel follows us in the truck and we pull in. Now one thing I remember I had to check out of course was the music, and I had the speaker already and prepared for this day, to make things lively of course. There was definitely euphoria to be found with music, one I would normally get from stimulants. And I did not give one shit. I blasted it throughout the whole storage garage. But basically we get things unlocked and get to hustling. Marcel and I were definitely in the mood with it as the ISO set in, and we really got moving. We emptied the storage unit like it was nothing. The big challenge was the couches, but Ashton did return to us at this point, and he did help us with this, which was a lot easier than when we first put it in. But we find a surprise in this storage unit. Just terrible thinking back. It was just this one box. There was a lot of dripping coming from it. I had no idea what it could have been, but I remember my girl and Andrea saying it smelled like rotten food, which I know for damn sure I didn't have any food the day I put this in. So I was really wondering what the hell it could have been. And it pissed me off because it ruined some of my childhood memories and shit. But let me explain what the hell this even was. So I had put a propagated cactus in a bag and then in this box. The plan was to clear the storage unit out within a month or two, but things got delayed. And it was June now at this point, and there were some super hot days already. I'm talking like 100 plus. And I just totally forgotten about putting the cactus in there. And I didn't even think it would be a problem anyways. I mean, cactuses do survive out in the desert, but it was probably just the conditions and being stored away like that. It probably got suffocated and it melted into this green goop. It smelled like food that had been out for a month, or like some diarrhea shit. Just foul. I couldn't believe it, but we took it straight to the trash can and that was that. Which I don't think the stimulant played much of a role in this. That was just some gross ass shit. I feel like the stimulant effects did have a slight boost on my ego, in a good way though, that allowed me to take the lead we needed for this day. But not to drag this out, we get everything in and proceed in an efficient manner. Ashton was doing better, and now we just had to drive to drop everything off at the new crib. The drive there was chill, and it did seem that time was moving a bit faster. Not really quick like how an Adderall can be sometimes, but just slightly noticeable. But to go with this day, I picked up this special pod from the pod the night before. And I've never seen these anywhere but Chicago, but the brand Hash Dynasty has some fire fucking wax. Well, I should say hash rosin. Some of the best I've ever had. Easily the most gas disposable I've had. Like the flavor on it was just so pure and clean. And I haven't had anything like it since. I've had wax that hits really good like this, but not like a pen like this. And only that hash rosin of course, that next level gas. So I was really stoned throughout this day too, which I feel like added some visual acuity and playfulness to everything. It also did play a role in euphoria felt, but also a little bit of dopamine chasing, which is a big reason why I don't use stimulants much at all anymore. But this pen will play a bigger role than just for me to hit it this day. It was kinda stupid, you'll just see. But past about a half hour and we pull up. Now we hadn't been to the place since we first seen it, so we were pretty excited, plus to show the homies of course. But we get out and just take a moment to chill out for a second. And at this part of the experience, we would just see how messed up Ashton actually was. At first it seemed he was better, that he just needed some water and a bit of time, but that wouldn't be the case. It was ridiculous. But I was in the mood to keep the ball rolling, so we started unloading the car and the truck. And this was a bitch at one point because of the couches and just trying to get them inside. I got more sweaty, but made sure to stay hydrated. I finished that energy drink, which added to the feelings of stimulation, not too heavily, but smoothly and actively. But as we start to get going and hustling, I start to notice how disoriented Ashton was. Like he was helping us bring in boxes and said let's do it, but at the same time, it was like he didn't know what was happening or where he was. It was pretty hilarious actually, because this dude got the door mixed up with two different others. The layout of the place we moved to is kinda hard to explain, but there was a door right by the garage basically, and Ashton kept on trying to open that door. Which that was locked the whole time, and he was getting frustrated, thinking we kept on locking him out or something. But I had to redirect him to the actual door like 2 or 3 different times. Just ridiculous, man. Like I would walk back outside just to find him in the same scenario again. And even Marcel had to help him too. But as helpless as I make it seem, Ashton did actually come through this day and provide a good hand this day, especially with the couches. Getting those hoes through the door, over this railing and dumb shit, it was a bitch. Along with some other big pieces we had. I didn't feel like I was getting too tired by any means, just kinda hot. So we did take a break at some point halfway. Just because we were going at it for like a good hour or so. It was chill, we just had a quick talk and smoke, and then of course Marcel and I redosed some of the Isopropylphenidate. Which I do have to say it didn't hit the same as it did when we took it earlier. And this can be for many reasons, possibly rapid tolerance, because of my physical state with all this strenuous work, maybe a lack of food, and possibly 10 other reasons I'm not including. Partially I do feel like this is the substance itself too though, being more focus dominant rather than rewarding. Although some studies do suggest that it does release more dopamine compared to Ritalin. The effects weren't so much like a rush by any means, but more like a soft steady current. It was kinda ghetto because we had nothing to set it up on, and we did some key bumps off the boxes. And then I actually decided to try intranasal. There was a really uncomfortable burn and some cloggage when I did it, but it hit a lot faster and harder. Somewhat MDMA-like, but like a quarter of that. Definitely more of a rush feeling when snorted. But I feel like it's only a strong boost for maybe like 20-30 minutes. Still, it was viable and not a bad way to ingest it. But we finished unloading and started to get ready to leave for the next storage unit. But thing was, I was looking for my hash rosin pen, right? I guess I had misplaced it in the midst of everything. And I have no doubt this was partially influenced from the effects from the stimulant, as I can tend to get careless with small things like this. I won't focus on this heavily, but to say the least, this shit made me pissed as fuck. Like super pissed. I specifically got this pen for this day, and it was my main way of hitting THC at the time. Which with this, I feel like the stimulant did likely influence some aggregation out of me. I mean, even if I wasn't on it, I would still be pissed regardless, but I was just like extra about it. Partially because I knew it was the stimulant that influenced this, and I didn't feel like I had the best searching capabilities with it. Like yeah, I can do all this moving, I can probably write up a paper or something, make a video, but hell no can I play Where's Waldo off of stimulants. So I looked everywhere, man. My car, the truck all around, beneath certain boxes and all this and that, in the damn grass. It was stupid. I'm pretty sure if anyone saw, I looked a bit crazy, because I ended up searching later for it too, and it bothered me the rest of this day. I don't know how I missed it, but it was in my trunk somehow. I must have just set it down when I grabbed a box or some shit. But I remember I was so pissed, that before I even found it, I said fuck all this, and bought a whole nother pot from the plug. And this shit wasn't cheap either. So I was irritated by that, but I feel like the universe kinda set me up for this. Anyways, moving on from that, this delayed us like a half hour or so, but I eventually gave up and we just went to the next storage unit. Which this was a bitch, but wouldn't be as bad because we were throwing a lot of things away. The drive there was a bit more steady, and not as euphoric because of my mood. But we cleared the next unit in no time, even though it was way bigger and had a lot more things. And we wrap things up there quickly and go over to the next town to throw some stuff out. And after, I'm pretty sure we dropped the truck off, as we were able to fit the rest of the stuff in the whips. It was some work, but we got things done. After which, we got a quick bite at Burger King. Had to smash and get these guys some food, of course. Ashton at this point got sober, as the food helped out. Somehow he did help us this day, and he said he doesn't even know how. But we sat for a little bit, got some fresh air outside, and Marcel and I did redose in the car at some point, which was a nice slight boost. And again, not to make this too long, this is pretty much where things get wrapped up. We had some unloading and unpacking left to do at the new crib, but it wouldn't be too long. And to end the day off, Marcel and I both had another bump or two, which I want to say we did end things off at his crib, till like midnight or 1 in the morning. I think I snorted and ate some, while Marcel only ate his. And again, Marcel wouldn't feel that much, which is probably due to his prior heavy stimulant usage. And I got some really solid effects that I would feel for a few hours, about 3 or 4 tops depending on the way you ingest it. Which this was a huge reason why we got it, and for something not so addictive or strong. Which from this, I had much more interest in the Isopropylphenidate than did Marcel. He just needed something stronger. Though it was still a stimulant drug, and personally, I don't think I thrive off of these. I won't go into this too deeply, but I guess I'll bring up my other use with this substance, because I highly doubt we'll have another story with this. Now, Marcel gave me a good amount of it, I think only like 100 or 200 milligrams, which is a good handful of doses. And it may have just been me at the time, going through this transition period and whatnot, but it was definitely more of a high enough feeling I got from it rather than an actual boost. I feel like it's something to use when you genuinely need that boost, as I more so used it casually. Like yeah, I'll use some of this today, even though I'm completely fine without it. So because of that, really I feel like it was the rewarding effects that I started subconsciously seeking out with stimulants, and masking the reason as, oh yeah, I should take this because it's going to help me be productive. And I would find instead of actually helping my focus, it could hinder it at times, partly due to the dopamine reinforcement. Just subconsciously without realizing, you might make choices that cause dopamine spikes. And then of course conscious behavior too can start to align. And I had used it all within a couple weeks, so tolerance and possible triggers could have been a thing. But even as I say this, yes, this isn't perfect, but it was far more effective in keeping me stable compared to some other prescription stimulants, especially ones like Vyvanse or Focalins. Snorting was a nice method of ingestion, as it was nice to get the feelings relatively quick, but I do feel like this added to the druggy feelings of no regards for your health. Also with stimulants, I do get this feeling that like vitamins and minerals are being sweated out, or are used up in a much unhealthier fashion, which with the appetite suppression, that doesn't help. But with all that, I think we're going to end the story off here. This was basically my experience with this RC stimulant, Isopropylphenidate. Kind of an experiment, but at the same time, something influenced by the homie. It was an interesting substance, and I honestly do feel like there's some potential uses with this one. There is differing affinity and bioavailability compared to Ritalin, which may make it a pro-choice for some patients. The timing factor is also a big pro I feel like, as most prescriptions tend to be at least like 6 to 8 hours. If not some being 10, 12, or even 14. To say the least, there's a lot to consider with this substance, and this story here was a good introduction for me. Who knows if I'll ever come across some again, but I will talk about this substance more in an explain episode down the road, and possibly in some other series too. We'll just see what happens. But yeah, that shit happened guys. There's the story time with Isopropylphenidate. If you had this substance, I'd like to hear your experience with it, because I do find some differing reports online. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the socials. And of course, let me know what you want to see next. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.